Hey there, welcome back to Ivan Outdoors. You've been doing something wrong to land here, so here you are. I want to apologize up front. The video quality of the interview was a little grainy, so I'm working on that. But I'm going to be interviewing my friend Chris today, who's got an Instagram account that I'll link to, Fishy Looking Flies. He might as well be a professional fly fisherman, fly tire, but he is just your everyday Jamoke. At the end, he gives me a little casting demo, so that's at the end. So if you're hearing this, you should head over to the YouTube channel to watch it, and I'm going to be putting up some images of him catching fish, etc., that sort of thing. So, all right, here you go. All right, so this is my friend Chris. I've known him for how long? Since high school.
I can't do that math.
I know, but I had not seen you in 2 decades at least.
It's been a long time.
Yeah,
for sure.
Until last year when we reconnected.
Yeah.
Why fishing in general, Chris? Why is it so important for us to fish and reconnect with that level of hunter-gatherism? Like, what does it do for you?
Wow. That's a deep question. Fishing is kind of I guess it's kind of my breakaway from, being in town, being in the day-to-day grind kind of stuff like that. But it's also, it's the way I connect with the outdoors, because it's not just, the fishing itself. It's really kind of getting out there, no matter what kind of water I'm on. It doesn't have to be a trout stream or something. Definitely just getting out there and enjoying the environment and where those fish are, because kind of inherent to fly fishing is I got to pay attention to what's kind of going on in their environment in order to be able to make this work. So
right. But
friends of mine got me into it long time ago. Pretty much would go on the pooter like every Sunday and bust just innumerable pooter jokes.
As one does
when they're running it up the pooter.
Even and on into our middle age, we still do.
Oh man, yeah. But and those guys are on distant ends of the planet right now, and we still run pooter jokes. So, but no, they're the ones that really kind of got me into it, and I don't know, it has always been a really great outdoorsy experience for me, Yeah. And Colorado obviously is a hell of a good place to get into it. Yeah.
Yeah, same. I mean, I think some of my first fishing memories were with my old man, and we would just be out in the middle of nowhere, Wyoming, fishing these just tiny little streams that just had, to me, huge fish. They were probably the size of my forearm, but I was also just a little bit bigger than Sven. So, I mean...
Right.
But that's still a big fish for a stream that's only...
And
I'm belly crawling,
honestly,
and I was just like, this is so awesome. I get to hunt and stalk these fish.
And that's kind of like...
And catch grasshoppers.
Yeah. And honestly, that's kind of a good way for a kid to learn how to get into it.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, like, there's a hopper. And I chuck a hopper into the creek, and this fish came up and ate it. And you're like, well, I think I might have one of those in my box.
Yeah, it's like a great little circle of life, and then you go eat the fish. And it really completes the loop.
Yeah, for sure, man.
You are on month, like...
We're in May, 98.
98.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's gonna be awesome. My dad will be out here in July and hit number 100.
That is quite the record. So you're gonna break 100 this year, no problem.
Yep.
And you're gonna keep it going.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So Chris makes it an effort to fly fish minimum of once a month. And I picked up on that, and I started trying to do a paddle once a month. And I found that it really helps me stay true to my passion and my sport, essentially. It keeps me accountable and it keeps me improving.
Yeah.
You know, no matter what, I got to go do something. And so thanks for that.
Yeah, man. And it also,
motivation.
for me too, it's like right now I'm doing school, I got work, I got kids, you know, just day to day. It's busy, 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 man. And kind of like at least once a month, especially in the winter, having something to like, okay,
you got to go.
This is where I'm going to go. I'm going to go do it. I'm going to make it happen. And yeah, there have been some tough winter months, you know. Have gone in and gotten skunked and just nothing but frozen islets and cold. And
it counts, though.
It counts. Yeah.
I don't know. Since we reconnected, I don't think I've seen a month go by where you didn't at least catch one fish.
Yeah, it's
so I don't believe you did.
That's where I think it's been the cumulative learning over, you know, years and years and years. Obviously, you know, I've been fly fishing a lot longer than 98 months.
Right.
But I bought my Forerunner the same month I got started. So that was kind of the catalyst to just be like, well, I got no excuse now. Like if there's snow, there's rain, there's mud, it's tough to get to.
You can count your payment. The kids are wrangling the family and stuff is just part of it, and it's just like, you know,
trying to get them out.
Yeah, and get out yourself. I mean, that's one of the reasons, like, I adopted your program of like once a month. Get out there. You know, because otherwise these guys will eddy me out completely.
No, man,
and yeah, like how should I
you
say
took
this?
on like a kind of a crazier task with like floating. I feel like I'm in a safe spot because I've got classic winter tailwater for the winter time and stuff like that. And yeah, I don't know. It's just definitely it's kind of crucial to get out at least once a month so I don't lose my freaking mind.
And that's what it is. It is the therapy that keeps me out of therapy, you know, and it's also an excuse to just say, hey, everybody knows, like, this is just what I have to do. And
and that's it's really awesome if you have like family that can support it and stuff like that. Supports my insanity, you know. And definitely knows that, like, you know, because I've got this streak going now that it's comes to the beginning of the month, and you know, get about 10 days into the month, and my wife's asking me like, why are you acting like an asshole? I'm like, I haven't fished yet. I gotta keep my streak.
I mean, I grew up throwing hardware, and I absolutely believe that spin fishing, if you want to catch fish, you can't go wrong. If you want to eat, you can't go wrong with a spinner.
And if you really want to eat,
bait. So, being that I like both, all the disciplines, but out of the discipline, all of them, I think that fly fishing is the hardest. So why fly fishing to you?
I feel like it's more connective.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm just kind of, I'm having, and it's connective in a lot of different ways. You know, when you experience throwing a dry and watching it, you know, float down amongst some other bugs on the water, and a fish comes up and eats your dry and stuff like that, it's a pretty exhilarating experience. And likewise, like, just like if you're running a streamer and something eats that streamer or chases that streamer, it's pretty amazing. But then also there's that aspect of learning about the nature and the trout or whatever fish you're going after, what they're eating and their environment and stuff like that. That kind of connection on it's pretty cool too. So
the intellectual connection.
Yeah, and so
you know, so do I need to be an entomologist?
No, man.
Because I can't. The flies that you've given me, and you're like, this is this and this is this. I'm like, that literally went in one ear and out the other. And I just
like
remember,
I said,
throw the dark one when it's overcast. You know,
I just go. You know, I tell people go by look at shapes and sizes and colors. You know, and probably start with size first, and then shape, right?
Yeah,
and then color, right? You see, and what's really maddening is that, you know, you'll be out there a lot of the times, especially in the colder months, and you're watching fish all of a sudden just sipping, and you're like, what are they eating? Air? Because the bugs that are coming off are just so micro you can't see. But I guess that's when I dig into my box and put on the super goggles and go, ooh, and tie on something really tiny.
Yeah, we'll look at your boxes here in a few minutes, but yeah, the amount of tiny that he can tie is really incredible, and I just don't know how. I mean, do they tie flies like commercially? Are those done by a machine?
No, those are all done by hand. And most of them are imported.
Okay.
So, you know, you'll have folks in Africa or Vietnam or Indonesia and stuff.
Because of child hands. So they're small hands.
It could be child hands and honestly just like materials are dirt cheap. Like think about like the amount of different kind of birds and chickens and stuff that they have available over there. It's pretty cool exotic feathers and stuff to get their hands on.
Yeah. So
and then it's also labor, you know.
What's going to happen?
Dirt cheap.
What's going to happen with the tariffs on flies now?
Oh no.
I mean, Americans are going to have to make them. And so flies are going to get bigger because of the sausage hand
Somebody's going to have to buy their flies from me, and I'm going to charge the living.
But the flies are going to get bigger because Americans got the sausage fingers.
I tie a size 30, which is.
Yeah, but you're skinny. You're the exception. I mean, look at those bony hands. I mean, Jesus.
Nah, man, it's like most. I don't know. A lot of flies do come from overseas. There's some commercial tires and stuff that are, you know, domestic, but you know, I guess that's a great way to think about it, man. It's because like if you want to buy high quality domestic flies, you're going to pay more. And I mean, like, the reason I like to tie my own so much is because mine don't blow apart after 3 or 4 casts, or I'll get one fish on and then that fly is toast and I got to put on a new one. I'll tie on a fly and I'll have that thing on for hours and like multiple fish, and it might get a little bit chewed up, but they hold, unless, you know, you snag them and lose them in the trees. Or
well, you know, I think the difference there, part of the difference there is that you're tying these flies for you versus tying these flies to see how many you can tie in a day.
100%. It's quality over quantity. Yeah.
Now, I have no interest in tying flies at all. That makes my eyes hurt just watching.
And that is definitely not something for everybody. When I first got started tying, it was probably one of the more challenging and frustrating things to do, because, you know, pulling too tight, breaking thread, you know, just doing all kinds of dumb stuff, and then what you've tied looks like shit, and then you go fishing and you lose it in a tree, and you're just like,
I think that gets back to, you know, this why fly fishing, and it seems to be such a cult. Or it can be, at least. It doesn't have to be.
Oh, God, yeah.
You know, the zen of it all, like, once you get to a certain level, it's almost like achieving winning Super Mario Brothers as a kid, you know? You're like, I won, I got it figured out. And that is just so satisfying to put it all together.
That's where it's been a lot of time, and just time by myself.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of a lot of just, yeah, there have been, it's, in order to make fly fishing look pretty and graceful like it does on the screen, takes an immense amount of hard work and just grinding through some just really frustrating
times. I mean, when I was learning to fly
and that's
fish,
like, why fly fishing? Why in the hell would you want to do that anyway?
I don't know. It's still hard to answer. I mean, I still bring a spinner with me almost every time I go out,
right on.
Because I'm like,
if I get hungry,
I do want to catch a fish.
Yeah,
even if I'm not going to eat it. But yeah, I mean, that's the way to do it. Is I would practice fly fishing for an hour or so, and if I was just getting fouled up, and then I would just switch over to the spinner,
right on,
and have some peace.
You get that moment of calm and stuff like that.
Yeah,
and like I said, man, it's just, there's a lot to do with it, right? You got bugs, you got line, you got all this other stuff that's kind of involved.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a kind of a more complex way to fish, but
yeah, it's fuzzy.
It's
so
pretty
fuzzy.
rewarding once you kind of get stuff dialed in, and you're like, you start feeling your cast come together, and you feel like, oh wow, that cast was really good, and now my line, like, things are coming together, and when things start to come together on that, that's where you feel that.
And then you finally get a bite, and you feel it on your hand, because your hand is on the line.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of it, is that you are so much more connected when you're actually fighting that fish.
Oh yes.
It feels more visceral, versus just hauling it in mechanically. And I know that sometimes you're at the, all your stripped line is out, and you're using the reel at sometimes.
Right.
But those initial moments when you set the hook and you start playing it, and it strips it out, it's that moment that I think is just, it's different than hooking into something with hardware.
Yeah. And
but not that I don't like
a lot of no, and a lot of that just goes into the gear, the equipment, how it responds and stuff like that. Yeah. And especially with those nice longer rods too, that you get a lot more response when you get head shakes from the fish, Yeah. That rod tip is just, every time a head's going like this, So.
Yeah, there is the lightness of the rod also makes it feel like you're more connected to the fish. It doesn't feel like it's not as much of a stick.
Caveat would be depending on the fly rod.
Well, that's true. Yeah, I mean, if you have
just big heavyweight suckers, so definitely feels kind of sticky, but you know what they're there for.
Yeah,
like a 40-pound fish.
Right. We'll get around to that, but basically, I think if I understand this right, the weight of the fly rod needs to be matched to the size of the fish, essentially, that you're going for.
You really do need to kind of pay attention to that.
Right. So the lower the number is, the lighter weight the rod. Right. Like a 4-weight. Versus an 8-weight, a 4 is for a smaller fish.
Correct.
An 8-weight is for
a big heavier fish. Yeah.
Now they're moving away. But yeah, getting out on the land and counting those days on the land, and the more days I spend out on the land, the happier I am between sessions, and the bigger the boost. Honestly, like, I guess it's dopamine. If I'm gone for 3 days, then it lasts for like 2 weeks.
Yeah, totally. Last weekend I was out, man, just like, I can go out and like maybe catch 1 or 2, and they don't have to be big fish, man. It's just that Stoke of like getting a fish on, right?
Yeah. And
just being like, yeah, cool, I got to go out and enjoy myself, got that again. But then every once in a while there's that, hit a tank,
right,
some big thing, and just had a guy that was guiding the bend up above, and it was totally quiet up there, nothing happening, and nobody's catching fish down or below me, but I'm in that moment, like catching a bunch of fish, and then hit a huge one, and I'm like making all this racket on the river, and like Yeah, I wish I could bottle that up, man.
I know.
But yeah, I mean that right there, like after I caught that big one, just super stoked, kind of funny, really quiet actually. The fish, get the fish in, get a good picture, stuff like that, little video, whatever. Cut him loose, and then sat there for about a minute, and then, you know, unloaded this big yahoo and just made a bunch of noise and dancing around and shaking my ass and stuff. Just like super stoked, man. Definitely people looking over there going like, was it really that great, guy? You know, like people catch fish every day here, man. You know, it was just it was just like we were kind of talking about earlier. It's that connection, right? I had made the decision to go from fishing one section below some rocks, using a certain, you know, using my nymphing rig.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I'm going to give that a break for a second, because I know, like, reading this water here, big rainbows like to hang in front of these big rocks. It's just where I've always found big rainbows. Mm-hmm. So I grabbed my other rod, which has got a streamer on it, and then ran that streamer in front of the rocks and watched him chase it and come and just hammer it probably 3 feet in front of me. Just, and you know, water clarity, just you'd see it, watch it all happen.
Yeah.
And then standing there just going, no way, no way, no way, no way. Kind of in like disbelief that I just made that happen.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and yeah. Yeah, exactly. You just fooled a monster, a pro. You fooled a pro fish,
right,
into taking your fake bait. So is there any place, like every tool has its place, right? And a fly rod is just another tool. Mm-hmm. Where do you think the fly rod really excels? Hold on, this is ridiculous. He can move on a little bit. Hey. So much for my old lady being on
duty. Do you ever go fishing with your dad or your grandpa when you were a kid, and he's like, shh,
yeah,
scare all the fish?
Yeah.
It wasn't because you'd scare all the fish.
It's because you drive the old man insane.
Just like I come out here to hear
nothing.
That's what I want to hear.
Yeah. So
the rod.
Yeah, the rod. Like, you know, as far as fly fishing goes, when does the fly rod excel? Like, what does it? God damn it, Sven! Knock it off! Beat it! So, yeah, like... God dang it. All right. Back to it. So, bait fishing has its place, spin fishing has its place. Where is the fly rod best? Is there any one place that excels, or is it just and only making us insane?
No, it makes you crazy.
That's where it excels.
The fly rod is best for fly fishing.
So
that's
for
it, man. It's like,
mentally challenged people.
Yeah,
neurodivergent.
There's certain instances where I think the fly rod is probably just maybe more of a fun challenge, right?
Yeah.
But like you were saying earlier, you want to catch a fish, you throw a spin rod. Like, you know, we would go up to the Miracle Mile, and I'll throw flies with a couple of my friends, and one of my buddies brings a spin rod, and he's chucking this Rapala 60 yards down the river and then reeling it back up and catching a fish every time he does it.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, covers so much more water. It's flashy, it's attractive, it's going to catch more fish. So I don't see that the fly rod is like got its...
No.
Like it's got a special benefit or something like that. Maybe in the instance of somewhere like really super skinny creeks.
Yeah.
Things like that where it's like you aren't even really casting, man.
No, you're dangling.
You're using that rod length to really kind of fish or whatever.
You're really sneaking. So. You're putting the stalk on the fish in the sneak in those situations.
When I first got started, like the very first rod I ever bought was a 7'9" 3-weight. Still have it. One of my favorite rods. But I was fishing a lot in Wild Basin, and at the time, like, not a lot of people up there fishing Wild Basin at all, and it was, and still is, like bushwhacky. Like, you cannot move hardly anywhere, do anything, and so 7'9" a great rod, but like literally would rarely have much line out just because it's all so tight.
I mean, when you're in a tight situation like that, are you almost only using the leader and you're not really throwing out any fly line?
You might have just enough like line out to give your leader a little bit of a boost, but really, you probably, with the combination of the leader and the line, you've maybe got 10 to 12 feet out from your rod tip.
Have you ever done a slingshot cast where you kind of pull it back and
the bow and arrow cast? Yes, bunches.
That's fun. Get your ear on the way by.
I've done it with like all different kinds of flies, man. All different kinds of flies. It's an art that has its challenges that don't they don't top off. You know what I mean? It's like you aren't gonna just like, okay, now that I've got fly fishing down, I'm done. I got no, man. You can kind of keep working. You'll plateau a little bit, and then you'll find like, okay, well, I need to up my mending game, or there's always some little aspect of what you're doing, and because like every time you go fishing somewhere different, it's slightly different. And so
every time it's different,
and your setups are different. So if you're running a different setup, then all the tactics kind of change a little bit and stuff like that. So it's just, like, honestly, it's a great way for somebody that's really bored and needs something to do that's challenging to do that. And it's like, some people take up martial arts or like jiu-jitsu or whatever, or golfing, or something where it's like, it's fun and they can kind of play at it, but in order for it to not stagnate and just become the same shit every time they go out, it like that, it's kind of one of those things. It's like, each time I go out, I'm really kind of trying to go like, okay, I'm going to go have fun, but I'm going to take one thing and I'm going to try and take one thing away. I'm going to try and like put one thing in and try and see if I can get one thing out, But that's also just me.
That is, I mean, because it is a fussy sport. It is fussy, not to mention you can spend a ton of money on it if you're not careful. And you got fancy pants. You got to have the fancy pants.
Nope.
You got to have the girdle. And you got to have all the dingle dangles.
So the nice thing about where we are today, and kind of the terrible thing, the nice thing is that if you are interested in fly fishing, you can go on Amazon, Sierra, wherever, and you can probably get almost everything you need to go spend a day on the water for under $100.
Yeah, and that is so clutch to be able to do that.
The bad part about that is now that there are so many people on the goddamn water.
But how can you simplify it for a noob? You know, how to streamline the process if someone wants to get into it.
Sure. Super
without
easy.
Getting all the fancy pants.
Yeah, no. Obviously, the first thing you need is a rod and something like a reel. It's going to be, you can't go without those two things. So, caveat would be like, there are those Tenkara rods out there, which are basically a cane pole. Yeah. But you definitely lose some versatility with those. But anyway,
I think that's a whole nother level. I wouldn't steer someone in the route of the Tenkara. But you need a rod like a cheapo Cabela's rod.
Yeah, you could go cheapo Cabela's rod, whatever. Rod, reel, you probably want to go with it's good to go with the kind of a cheaper setup to start, because you don't know if you're going to like it. And you're also probably going to if you haven't fished with the fly rod before, you'll be walking around with something that's typically about 3 or 4 feet longer than you're used to.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to run into trees, you're going to bang it against rocks, you're going to beat it up.
Yeah.
And it's a lot better to beat up cheap stuff. And then you just need some leader, maybe some tippet, and some flies. And that's it.
Yeah. So let's explain some of those things here. So I know some of it, but you're the expert here. So what is the difference between the fly line, the leader, and the tippets? I'm sure some people already know this. But
so like fly line, and I guess what makes the fly line unique to fly fishing.
And why the fly line? Why do they?
So one of the things, what really sets like conventional spin fishing and fly fishing apart is when you're doing spin fishing, your lure is the weight that pulls your line.
Yeah.
Right? With fly fishing, the line is the weight that takes your fly out.
Right.
Right? And so, that's basically, that line is what's getting your flies out, right? And so that's where, like, even if it's even a little bit of a short, kind of just popping it out a little bit, you'll still almost want a little bit just to give it direction.
Right. When I do that, when I only have a few inches, that's what she said. When
she was standing in the cold water.
Right. So, I find that it gets pulled back too easily through the eyelets. Yeah. And then it's sinking back at me.
It gets snaked back up. Yeah.
So how do you keep that from happening? Essentially, when you only have
more
a foot
line
out there, just more line.
Yeah, just a little.
So
bit
shorter
more
leader. So then you shorten your leader.
Your leader may be too short at that point too, because
shortest?
It doesn't have enough drag.
Yeah. So the leader, right? So the leader is the monofilament that everybody's used to, and that attaches in any number of ways, and then the tippet is
So usually you'll have your your fly line, and then you'll go to your leader and different weights, lengths, whatever. And generally they're tapered, right? Mm-hmm. It'll have that butt section will be heavier, and then it'll go down to whatever line strength or whatever you're using, and then from there, flies or tippet,
Okay.
More tippet, more flies.
Right. And then the tippet is the thing that I think is confusing for a lot of people, that, there's so many designations of tippet, like 9X, 5X, etc.
Yeah, and that also extends into the leaders, right?
Yeah, 1 second.
Yep.
Hey, guys! Sven! Beat it! Okay.
So you have your so to back up a little bit, so like your rods, you have your rod weights, right?
Yeah.
And so I typically am fishing a 4-weight or 6-weight. Either of those, I won't fish line that's heavier than what those rods will go.
Okay.
Right? So on that 4-weight, whatever, it's maybe rated to I could probably pull a 10-pound fish if I was really pushing. But I won't put big, thick, heavy line on that stuff. So
right.
So now I've got typically 4-weight line.
Yep.
Then I've got my leader, and at that point, that leader can be 0x, 1x, so all these different X numbers, right? And so as you lower your number, it's the heavier the weight. So 0x can be 12 to 15 pound, maybe 20 pound, somewhere in there. And I've seen, I have used as far as down as 7x, and 7x is 2.4 pound. It's really, and it is like if I hold it like this, you're like, you holding anything? You know, it's that small. But it's also typically used on really, really, really tiny flies.
Yeah.
And so you can get leaders all the way down to 7X.
Right.
So you also have the tippet, and the tippet goes in the same measurements and stuff like that.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And if you have a 5X leader, you want to use 5X tippet or a higher number, right?
So
you want to use 5, 6, 7, 5, right?
Yeah, so you don't.
So you never want to tie 4 onto a 5.
You don't want to tie a fat piece of rope onto a skinny piece of rope.
Bingo. And especially in that really kind of boils down into the mechanics of like the line, how it carries the leader and the tippet and all that stuff out. If you have something kind of heavier like that at the end,
it fouls it up.
You're gonna be undoing crazy wicked knots.
It whips the most impenetrable knot ever.
Oh yeah. I got the knot rule. The knot rule is 2 minutes. If I can't get it done in 2 minutes, I'm cutting it off and starting over.
Oh,
because I can tie an entire rig in 2.5 minutes or so.
That is like one of the biggest things I think that people find tough to get started fly fishing is that it is fussy, man.
Oof. And knots, and you get into the wind or whatever and stuff like that, man. And it's just like,
makes that fish all that more rewarding.
Oh yeah. I've had my cursing fits on the riverbank.
Yeah.
The second that I get an entire setup done and super sketchy fish, and it's like I've got a 12-foot leader on. Mm-hmm. Usually they come in 9-foot, but you can get 12-footers. Super long. It's like 7X. Put this fly on and holding it like this, get ready to cast, and go like, let it go, and all of a sudden it just like into a knot again.
Yeah, that's fishing, man.
Just passing through.
All right.
It's fancy pants. No. Well, and like this time of the year, it's starting to warm up. You just wet wade.
Yeah,
you
sandals,
just walk on in there with some sandals or
some neoprene socks can help.
And that's where those going alpine lakes or going and fishing in wild basin will I almost ate the riverbank once because my Achilles wasn't working because it was so cold.
Yeah.
Waders are optional. Definitely in the wintertime they super help, and they definitely have their benefits in some of the cold water. Sure. You can, like anything in fly fishing, you could dump some money into waders. I'm really, really stoked on mine. I've been at it for a long time, so I've found the value in some more expensive waders.
Sure, you're a pro.
But and I also it's nice to be able to send my waders back and have them fixed and not have to buy a whole new set of waders because they're so expensive.
Right.
But that being said, again, you can go on Amazon, do whatever, go on to Sierra, and you can find some cheap waders, some cheap boots if you're going to be out in the colder season, going to be out in deeper water and your knees or your other parts can't handle that cold blast. It's good to have those waders. They do help. But if you do get waders, make sure you keep them things clean. Clean your boots, stuff like that when you come out.
Why?
Mud snails, invasives.
Oh, invasives, right.
So you want to just kind of make sure that you're not tracking dirt and mud and things
that's a
from
good point.
One river system to another.
Yeah, we're trained to think about it for boats, but the waders, I guess, carry just as many.
Just as much, man.
Yeah, I didn't even think about
just
that.
Kind of,
That's a really good
point.
It
goes back to kind of, just being...
Now, what about other chingaderas and other hangy down parts that you're dangling off of your body? Because you see some fly fishermen, and it's like they got a lot of gear hanging off of them.
So I usually have...
How many pieces do I need? How many pieces of fly fishing flair to be
honestly,
welcomed?
man, I usually, as far as dangly stuff, I usually have got my I've got nippers and a little patch on my sling, as far as like kind of, and I do try and keep some hemostats close by.
Yeah.
Just because sometimes a fish will inhale a fly, or you didn't crimp your barb good enough, so it's sticking in there a little bit, or you stick yourself and you want to pull it out. But yeah,
I
usually have a bag with me.
Do you carry a net?
Yes.
I almost never carry a net.
The nets nowadays are built pretty nice. The way my bag's set up, and I'm typically wearing waders.
Yeah.
And even if I'm not wearing waders, my bag has a belt on it.
Right.
And I just slide that thing on the back side of my back, and
yeah, it does make it handy.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I would not be landing all the fish that I do if I didn't have a net, for sure.
Which is why I don't land as many fish.
Get a net. And I have been yelled at before on rivers. They're like, "You gotta get a bigger net."
That's a good thing to hear.
Oh yeah. No, actually, a couple guys were floating down the North Platte in the Miracle Mile, and they were floating by me when I was on a fish, and yeah, they were laughing at me because I was struggling trying to get in this little teeny trout net.
That's funny. My dog starts going off. I'm gonna have to put one of them down. I can't do it. Between the two of them, I don't know.
We're done.
Should put Sven down or the dog. I guess
it'd be really quiet around here.
Yeah. False casts. So explain a little bit about the false cast to folks, because that is also, I mean, it's not intuitive how you get it going, why you need to do it.
And what are you doing? Like,
and what does it do for you?
And that's kind of like, if I'm false casting, it needs to serve a purpose.
Yeah.
And typically it'll, I think the main purpose it serves is to get more line out, right?
Right.
So each time you're pulling a line back, then you can allow some to slip through your hand, and then when you go forward, you slip some more, and that allows more line to travel out, so you can get the distance of line out that you need to get whatever you're trying to fish to. The other time is that, like, even if you're not letting line out, you might be fishing a dry fly, and you want to try and keep that dry up off the water as much as possible, and maybe even do some snappy casts to try and dry that fly off a little bit. That could be an instance,
right?
But
so
you typically just don't want to be just like, like if you're fishing nymphs, you shouldn't be just sitting there whipping your nymphs through the air. It just doesn't make sense.
Well, I've never caught a fish in the air.
No.
It's always been when my line's been in the water.
And a lot of the times when you see folks that are out just doing this, it's because they really haven't kind of got into like, whoa, what am I doing?
Because that's what we see. That's what you see, I mean, I pulled out my copy of A River Runs Through It, and it showed it right there on the cover.
Just as a kind of a thought, like, think about the amount of resistance there is in water versus air. And what I do most of the time is I will let my stuff go drift downstream. And there's my resistance. And I will let that resistance get a water load and just use that to rocket it downstream.
I do the same thing.
And if I'm not using a dry, which I'm using nymphs or a streamer or something like that, I will let loops of line go downstream and let the line go out.
And then slingshot
and just
it up.
Yank it, boom, it shoots it all up. And then I haven't, like, you could be fishing somewhere up on some super skinny water where the trout are spooky. It's probably a better approach to do that and get one shot, other than having that line going above the fish.
Slapping the water, I mean, half the time that I'm trying to do it, I end up slapping the water, and I'm not good at it. By any
my
means.
casting is not
the
great.
Slingshot method is. I love that.
And if you're working flat water, like a lake or something like that, you can kind of use that same principle. And I think it's probably, I haven't done it myself.
Yeah, you can.
You doing it for loop casts, right?
Yep.
You can use it behind you to do the same load, but when you're pulling your line up,
right,
like this, you'll get that line drag, which will allow you to build a loop.
So one thing that I'll do sometimes is, my initial, I got to spool it up, get those false casts going and get it out there. And then I'll fish that spot, let it do its thing, especially if it's moving water. And then when I pick it up, I'll look and see where else can I place it that is maybe undisturbed. And then I'll pick it up and flang it into that spot and let that carry it down, tighten it up again, and then bam, over there.
That's cool.
And then there, and I haven't done a single false cast except when I just was getting the line out.
Yep.
And that helps keep your line in the water and out of the trees.
Yeah. For sure.
And because that's really like, you're always getting caught on the back cast. So if the back cast is in the water,
I try and keep a really good sense of what's behind me before I move my line back.
Right.
Because I fish a lot with 2 rods and I like to move.
Yeah.
And I will put my second rod actually in the
so standing up like an
in
antenna?
The water bottle holder on my belt. And I try and tie it so it's down at about a 45-degree angle, but sometimes it's up or it's out or whatever.
Right.
So I have to be really cognizant of that thing. And at least 3 or 4 times while I'm out there, I'll go to do this water load and go to sling it. But when I sling it, right, my body rotates and my rod comes out and whoosh.
It's like you're carrying a willow with you all the time, just ready to be snagged.
Big tall tree to just get snagged on the whole time.
Yeah.
But
what were we saying about fly fishing being fussy and?
That's the kind of funny thing. Yeah, it's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go out and have my peaceful time in nature, and then somebody takes a video of me on the side of the river and I'm just down there going but it go from that to ties and lows, go from that to catching a fish and being
Yep, absolutely. So is there while we're on the topic of keeping it simple for the stupid, is there what's the bomb-proof way, how should I phrase this? What's the most streamlined way to set up your leader tippet situation for the novice?
Right.
Is there
pretty much
what would make it simpler?
I would always say for the novice is always going with probably 1 fly.
Yeah, and maybe just a tapered, one tapered
tops.
Leader.
And that's exactly what I suggest.
They're a little expensive, but
they're 1 tapered leader, and you can get a little spool of tippet that's in the same gauge as your leader. But it just just that one fly. Mm-hmm. Nice. Didn't have to be anything too huge, but not too small. Just something kind of trouty and. Put that on the leader.
Yeah, I would say a streamer, even like a woolly bugger or something, because it's got the weight. And
actually, that's a really good
learning
point.
To cast.
If your background is spin casting, right?
You're used to honking a chunk of weight out there.
Yeah, and so what's really going to screw you up the most is that line mechanic, right? You're used to whipping that. And you see people do it all the time when they're going from spin casting to fly fishing, trying to whip the weight of the lure, which streamers can be as heavy as lures, And so it's really trying to figure out, how do I do that with this kind of goofy, weird line stuff, right? Once you kind of get the idea of just how to kind of toss it, because you're not going to do a fancy cast with the streamer a lot of the time, right?
No.
It's just too meaty. You chuck that across, you're really thinking about all the same places that I would throw a spinner, the same places I would throw a streamer.
Yeah.
And the same way I would do this
Well,
to bring it back
they're
across
mimicking the
river.
same animals.
Yeah, and that's the same thing.
Yeah.
It's like, with this streamer, you're basically falling into the same kind of thing that you would be doing with the spin fishing. So
I think that's a good transition
it's a help
for people.
crossover.
Yeah, the crossover starting point.
One of the more difficult parts of fly fishing is the drift.
Yeah.
Right? Getting that fly to like cast it out. Now you've got line on the water and stuff like that, and especially more line, it gets complicated with drift, swing, and blah, blah, blah. But just getting that one fly to go out onto a pool and then stay there or drift out with the current.
I would say even starting in a lake, starting on flat water is helpful.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
All right. That's about it. So let's look at your fly boxes, and if there is such a thing, what are like 4 flies, one for each season, that are just like, you're going to have a good chance of catching on this no matter where you are in the West, and at least in our part of the country.
Right.
And, just to start out, one fly per season. Can you such a thing?
Totally. So it's like start at winter, right?
Yeah.
So kind of my go-to winter has been...
Can you bring it over here?
Yeah. Been this midge pattern right here. So winter bugs are small. Going to be really,
Yeah.
They and typically that's kind of big for winter.
That's big.
That's big. So kind of similar to how the lines will, like, as the X gauge goes up, the line weight goes down. Similar to and the hook sizes here, as the number goes up, the size goes down, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the super tiny ones you'll see in there are around 24s and stuff like that. And then the biggest things in this box are size 20, which is the one I pulled out. So
I mean, my thumb for reference there.
Yeah.
It's like they are tiny.
Yeah, you could stack a bunch of them on a dime, that's for sure. So, those are really kind of like the solid winter.
Mm-hmm.
Summers, when we kind of start moving into, spring, moving into like more dries, stuff like that. So that's when you're going to start using your caddisfly patterns.
There we go. Yeah.
So little caddisflies and stuff like that.
Okay.
And then you're probably looking at starting to get into...
Do you tie all these?
Yes.
It's insane.
Getting into like small betas and stuff like this. Summer nymph flies, I slide into the big stone flies and go into terrestrials.
So to explain the nymphs, nymphing is fishing below the surface.
Nymphing is just like that larval stage.
These all drop down.
Exactly. These are all the larval stage of the insect. So like these ones will transition into like these big poofy kind of
over here.
Guys like that. Throw more like terrestrials, grasshoppers, things like that.
I do love throwing the terrestrials, as you put it.
These ones are great in the summer.
Yeah.
Big old, it's called an Amy's ant.
Thing's huge. I like throwing them because I can see them.
That is my favorite thing in the world. You throw in a big fat dry like that, hopper or something, and just having a fish come up and just chomp on it. It's so cool.
Yeah. Yeah, there's something really fun about just seeing them hit a big fat dry fly on the surface.
And then in fall, fish are gonna start. They know when winter's coming, and so they're gonna want to start eating more large things. So I might start working, throwing streamers in fall. stuff like that. Smaller ones are kind of good for like skinnier water, but then obviously, you know, you can go big.
Yeah,
go to a lake somewhere and
throw something big and
chuck
fat.
out a mouse.
I still have yet to catch anything on a mouse pattern, but I really want to.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
you know, crayfish are great. Come in the fall, even in the spring and summer, crayfish are good ones. So, you know, once it starts warming up, pretty much my routine anymore is that I will throw a streamer in the morning, and then I'll move to maybe some nymphs later. Keep an eye on the surface, see if there's any dry fly activity. But yeah, it's pretty much just that little cycle of dries and nymphs and meat. Throw some meat at them. When in doubt, throw some meat. Well, that's totally, man. Like, if I'm not catching anything on nymphs or anything like that, then I will full on just like chuck on a big old streamer and let her rip.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, so now is the point where you might want to go over to the YouTube channel. Chris is going to give us a little demonstration of how to cast.
So, yeah, typically when I'm kind of getting ready to cast, I always make sure that I've at least got a little bit of something out, and then draw it out just a little bit more so we don't run into it getting fed back into the rod, right? Super simple. Most of the places we're fishing around here, you know, if you've got like river going left, right, you're typically just doing that. You know, it's nothing too fancy. You'll drift it down, and then just do that. Pop it back over, you know. It doesn't require a lot of false casting. So whatever you're trying to achieve with the false cast, if you have this much out, you don't need to do this to get that much line.
Right.
However,
Right. So yeah, you've got, what have you got here? I don't know if the camera can see this, but like maybe
2 feet,
2 feet.
maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, not much. Most of the length is going to come from this leader. This is all leader, right?
Right.
And so that's where you're going to put that little teeny fly out there. You've got a fish way over there, and you're going like that, right? So, you know, maybe that fish is just a little bit further out. Then I will actually kind of think about, well, how much further out is that fish really? And I will pull that much distance off of my reel. I don't sit there and pull a little bit off the reel and cast some more. I kind of pre-think distance-wise, that's how much I need to go. That reduces how much false casting I'm doing, right? Because then I'm not sitting there going like this every time I want to pull a little chunk out. I now have this much out, and I can go one cast.
Gotcha.
Right? And kind of like what we chatted about earlier, you know, if you're using river to pull your length out, you've got all this river current pulling your rod out, and then you can use that river drag to chuck it out there. Something that really maybe comes from our generation of guys that were watching Indiana Jones all the time, the whip, man. That's what this thing is.
Right.
It's a long-handled whip. You're going, whoosh, whoosh, and that's it. I mean, you're whipping that thing.
Yeah.
And so if you can kind of like put that into like, oh, so it's not, if you noodle it, see how it dies. It falls dead here, and that might be okay. You might want a quiet thing, but if you're looking to get line out, you whip it back, whip it forward, and it sends it, you know? So, so false casting, you know, you can use to get line out and put quite a bit of distance of line out, right, with a false cast.
How far out are you there? That's,
I don't know.
Yeah.
A little ways.
30, 40 feet.
But say now you have all this line out. I just want to do 1 or 2 to get that same line back out. So you can work on something called a double haul. This is a single haul. When I pull it back, I let line out, and then forward, and I let line out, and then I let it go, right?
Right.
Double haul, I'm pulling line both directions. So I'm gonna pull, 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 pull. And that forward pull generally allows for like a big dump of line. You can 1, 2, and send it.
You got it all out. Yeah.
So it's just kind of really starting to understand too, is like, okay, the more line I have out, the more weight I have out. I have all that weight. I gotta wait for it to get out there in order, you know,
yeah,
you're not gonna be sitting there doing this.
Right, you almost need a little bit of a pause at each end.
You have to, yeah, you have to let it load. And so I bet you if, you know, you put this on a slow-mo, you watch, it comes back, it loads, it goes forward, it loads, forward, load, 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 load.
Right.
So it's just kind of like, and this is where it's like, you know, don't practice on the river. Practice in the park. There's no trees here. You're not going to get hung up on anything. Maybe put a little piece of split or something on there and then start going, oh, I'm going to try and put it on that stump. Oh, I'm a little off right. Must be the wind.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep.
And just start kind of making...
pick a target.
Pick a target, you know?
Practicing it.
So you've got, coming from above, you've got your overhand cast, you can pull back, get a loop. Again, you're getting, kind of trying to get some of that drag. Loops can be tricky and kind of almost dependent for water drag.
Yeah, there's something stuck there. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah. And that's where, like, I'd really like to learn the, what do they call it? Is you flip it back this way and then it's like spay casting.
Yeah, what is...
And that's for going after steelhead and salmon and stuff. And you usually got like a 10 to a 12 foot two-handed rod. So what it does is it throws this loop, you throw a loop upstream and then send it.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, it's pretty cool.
Cool.
Fun stuff.
All right, man. I think I got enough to keep me busy for a few hours in the evening.
I guess so.
So this is what your interior will start to look like?
Yeah, but look at the back.